Hello, and thank you for joining me again. Continuing in my current theme of Turnip28 stuff, after I did the house a few weeks ago. Over Christmas, I started sculpting up my old regiment in Blender and printing it out, and next up for the regiment was the lump. So I started off with a bunch of doodles and sketches and tried to keep it in the design aesthetic that would match the current guys I've done. It was sort of weird little British goblin people, aiming for kind of halfway between Labyrinth and those little gremlin guys from Van Helsing. The print came out pretty good, just one minor print fail where there's a line running through the entire model. But not particularly bad. I also decided to give him a little whip guy who would ride on his back, and a little platform for him to stand on. This also means he could be a toady or a toff, depending on what I need him to be. I found something online that said lumps needed to be on a 40 to 60mm size base, so I went for a 50mm one, to cut the difference. And while the super glue was curing on that, I got distracted by some Argatoria and these little Beastmen command figures. I'd like to do more Argatoria content. I feel like that game needs a bit more of a spotlight on it. But anyway, back to the lump. I grabbed some ground texture acrylic paste from Vallejo, going for the rough pumice effect, and globbed that down onto the base, filling in the gap between the bottom of the model and the base itself, which also helps to stick the model down. With the pumice effect mostly dry, I then moved on to an earth texture paste, which is a bit finer, and filled in the gaps, giving a nice little variety of texture, as well as giving me an opportunity to put a few small rocks onto the base as well. Taking some black gesso, I then primed the entire piece. Following the priming layer, I took dark brown and a soft dry brush, and applied a layer over the entire thing. For the paints, I used AK Interactive for the most part, with a few of the older P3 paints as well. I wanted him to match the rest of the regiment, so I base coated his uniform with a dark red. Using a mid-brown, I then picked out the leathers, as well as the wooden handles on his pruning knives. His armour plating got a base coat of gunmetal, which for AK Interactive seems to be quite a bright silver. Also using the gunmetal to pull out some of the details on the medallions. Then a lighter tan brown to pull out the details of the fur. Moving to his tail, I used greenish brown to give that a base coat. Giving his belly a coat of tan brown, just to blend it in and make it appear a bit lighter and contrast to the green outer flesh. Then I got sidetracked by Argatoria and based up the command figures for the Beastmen, before using some watered down Tenebus brown and giving the entire lump a glaze. This will darken down all the colours, take the sheen off the metal, and bump up the contrast where the paint goes into the recesses, but it can take a little while to dry, so I use this time to base up a polar bear with a hammer and a shotgun. With the glaze dried, it looks a lot darker and blends together a bit more. So going back in with the original red colour, we want to pick out the highlights and add a bit more of a contrast, avoiding any of the recesses. I then bumped up the contrast again by taking an even lighter red, applying it only onto the very highest edges of the cloth, and pulled out the kind of lumpy boils in his tail, using an even lighter green-brown paint, and using a brush that was way too big for this. But you can tidy stuff up later. For the medals, I took a gold paint from P3, so that they would stand out next to the darker, metallic colour of the armour, and also contrast with the red uniform. Now he's starting to look about right, but he's still way too clean, so taking watered down rust coloured paint and started dabbing it onto the armour plating, letting it pool in the recesses, where rust naturally builds up. Also coating his blades. And as someone pointed out before, some metallics don't rust, they only oxidise. So for the gold or gold effect metals, I'm going to take some turquoise blue and give that some oxidisation. I also wanted to try making a nice silvery slime trail behind him, so taking some pale grey blue paint underneath where his tail is. To add some proper gross slimy effect, I I took some water texture paste from Vallejo again, using an oil brush to paint that all around the sides of the model, where it touches the base and would be excreted from the slug part. The rider was painted up exactly the same way, using a dab of superglue on the base of the foot and his open palm to attach him to the back of the lump. Moving to the final and best step, I took 3 different colours of tiny 2mm tufts and applied a few sparingly around the base. So that is the finished lump, but he could serve double purpose as a toady or a toff, depending on what I need him to be. And the slime has come out looking suitably mucousy and disgusting, so quite pleased with that. Having a quick look at the rest of the regiment so far, so we have one of the other toadies. He's got a nice cup of tea, not looking where he's shooting, and he's got a nice little weirdo with him. There's a few of these models who have like a little pet guy with them. But next up we have 6 brutes, armed with melee weapons. So they've got a variety of pointy sticks and knives and whatever else they can find really. Then we had 12 fodder with ranged black powder weaponry, just a mixture of blunderbusses and muskets and whatever. And again, some of them are pets. So we've got a slug with a top hat and a moustache, and his little helmet guys, who were based off an earlier idea for the helmets that the actual guys themselves would have before they went for the hunchback look. They've also each got a unique little implement to use, and each of them has a unique musket to themselves. This guy has a nice little pipe. But yeah, that's the regiment, still very much a work in progress, and the files will be available on my mini factory once I finish them up and get around to uploading them. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you next time.